When you're in chaos and you don't know what's going on, then you start imagining what might be going on. And that imagination is partly the world, as it might be, but it's also partly the structure of your unconscious mind, which is producing the fantasies. You know, I've circumvented the obstacle. Now, if I didn't know how to do the little bit of circumvention, then that would be a real problem, right? Because I couldn't get from point A to B, and that would screw up my plan. But I do have that particular skill set, so it's a minor disruption to the perceptual set that I'm using to organize the world. It's a minor bit of chaos.
One of my favorite sayings applies in these situations. Control the knobs on your side of the wall. You can't control other people. You can only control your response to it. Even you are extrovert doesn't mean that being an extrovert is without its challenges. But one should have ability to face every other situation with calm. The world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing. If today gets difficult, remember the smell of coffee, the way sunlight bounces off a window, the sound of your favorite person's laugh, the feeling when a song you love comes on, the color of the sky at dusk, and that we are here to take care of each other.
Oriented activity is likely to get you in trouble, that being extroverted and low in neuroticism wouldn't be a very good idea, because you're going to be mouthy and happy and saying a lot of things, unable to keep your thoughts to yourself, and you're going to be relatively fearless. Now, I don't know that for sure, because we haven't done the studies that precisely match temperamental proclivity to environmental demand, but you get what I mean. If you're an extrovert, I was going to tell you the extroverted question. Does being around groups of people make you energetic, or does it exhaust you? And if you're the sort of person that, you know, will go to a party and interact with 20 people, and then you have to go home and be by yourself for like 2 weeks, then you're introverted. Introverts are exhausted by social interactions. Extroverts are the opposite. They're energized by social interactions. And you know, you might be in the middle, so that you can take it or leave it with regards to social interactions, but you're happy to go to them and you're happy to spend time by yourself. I read a nice article by a coalition called Human Progress the other day, and they were comparing the typical middle-class person who lives now with Rockefellers in the 1919s, and say, well, would you rather be a middle-class person now or Nelson Rockefeller in 1919? And the answer seemed pretty damn clear that, well, you know, if you were Nelson Rockefeller, then you would have been richer than anyone else. And there's something to be said for that status, right? Because people do like to have more than others. I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but it is one of the things that we like. And so you'd have that. You'd be richer than everyone else. But there'd be all sorts of things that you have that now that Nelson Rockefeller wouldn't have had a hope of purchasing, like the antibiotics that he would have needed to stop his son from dying, for example. You know, just as a start. And so I think this complaint about inequality, look, no one likes inequality exactly. You walk down the street, this is why I always get a kick out of people who protest, I'm against poverty.
Instead of worrying about what the world can do to you, find strength in who you've become because of what you've been through, and trust in this moment that you can rely on those strengths to serve you well, no matter what the future holds. The biggest thing about making money is time. You don't have to be particularly smart, you just have to be patient. People say that money is not the key to happiness, but I always figured if you have enough money, you can have a key made.
Some of it still has to do with the innate human emotional response to inequality. You know, when you walk down the street and you see a ruined alcoholic schizophrenic who's obviously suffering in 50 different dimensions, it's very difficult to feel positive about the state of humanity in the world. And it's very easy for a reflexive compassion to take over and say, well, wouldn't it be something if we could just retool society so that none of that was necessary? It must be someone's fault. It must be something that we're not doing right. And, you know, there's some truth in that because, of course, our systems could be better than they are. And it seems to me to be that unreflexive compassion that drives whatever residual attractiveness that Marxism still has, apart also from the darker possibility, which is that it really does appeal to the jealousy that's characteristic of people and the envy, and which manifests itself as hatred for hierarchy on the basis that some people are doing better than me.
if you happen to be creative, if you're a songwriter or another kind of musician or an artist or any of the other number of things that you might be, find a way to make money and then practice your craft on the side, because you'll starve to death otherwise. Now, for some of you that won't be true, but it's a tiny minority. Your best bet is to find a job that will keep body and soul together and parse off some time that you can pursue your creative thing, because then, well, as a long-term strategy, a medium to long-term strategy, it's a better one. But it's got incredibly difficult for people, musicians, for example, it's incredibly difficult for new musicians to monetize their craft, even if they're really, really good at it. So so I say, well, everyone's not creative, and everybody goes, oh, that's terrible. It's like, it's not so terrible. It's not self-evident that you would curse someone with high levels of creativity.
Be honest about how you've contributed to the situation. Maybe your coworker seems irritable about a request you've made, but your request was made at the last minute. Now they have to drop everything to help. Admitting to yourself and to them your fault in the matter goes a long way to creating peace. It may be as simple as finding out where they went to college, favorite team, or where they grew up. Try to find some small way to build a bridge with the difficult people in your life.
Adjectives within the English language first that were used to describe human beings, as many adjectives as they could collect, and then subjected them to a process called factor analysis. And what factor analysis does is enable you statistically to determine, in some sense, how similar adjectives are to one another. So, for example, if you gave 1,000 people a list of adjectives to describe themselves with, and one of the adjectives was happy, and another of the adjectives was social, you'd find that those who rated themselves high on happy would also rate themselves high on social, and those who rated themselves low on happy would also rate themselves low on social. And by looking at those patterns of covariation, you can determine what the essential dimensions are of human personality. One of the dimensions is, roughly, happiness. That's extroversion. Another dimension is neuroticism. It's a negative emotion dimension. So if you ask someone if they're anxious and they score high, say on a scale of 1 to 7, they're also likely to score high on another item that says that they're sad. And it turns out that negative emotions clump together, and so that people who experience more of one negative emotion have a propensity to experience more of all of them.
If you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. A day, go fishing. A year, inherit a fortune. If you want happiness for a lifetime, help somebody. You've heard the old saying, a change is as good as a rest. Well, it's also true that a rest can be as good as a change. Sometimes we just need a bit of space to get our groove back. No matter what the day brings, don't forget that each new morning offers a new opportunity to get it right. Pandemic or not, difficult times are just a fact of life.
Well, imagine what happens when you play Monopoly. What happens? Everybody has the same amount of money to begin with. So then you start playing. It's basically a random game. Well, some people start to win a bit, and some people start to lose a bit. And then if you win, the probability that you'll keep winning starts to increase. And if you lose, your vulnerability increases as you lose. And then maybe you've got, say, 6 people playing Monopoly. Soon one person has 0. What happens when they have 0? They're out of the game. So 0 is a weird number, because when you hit 0, you're out of the game. So then if you keep playing, people start to stack up at 0, right? What happens at the end of the game? One person has all the property and all the money, and everyone else has none.
And like, I've worked with poor people, in my clinical practice, and poor in multiple dimensions. And many of them, you gave them money, they were just done. Especially if they were like alcoholics and cocaine addicts. As long as they were broke, they had some hope of living through the next month. But as soon as their unemployment check showed up, man, they were face down in the ditch 3 days later, right? Nothing but cocaine and alcohol with all their idiot friends for 3 days. And then they'd show up back in my practice saying, God, I relapsed again. It's, well, what happened? Well, my money came in. It's like, yeah, money's really going to do you a hell of a lot of good. It just kill you faster than poverty. Now, not that there's anything good about poverty, but it's not like these are simple problems. You walk down the street and you see someone who's been an alcoholic for 20 years and maybe they're addicted to methamphetamines as well, or maybe they're schizophrenic. It's like, it isn't unequal distribution of monetary resources that is the primary cause for that problem, and it isn't going to be some sort of straightforward redistribution that's going to fix it, because it's way more complicated than that.
If you can remember all the times people have had to show you grace and understanding, it will go a long way to helping you find the grace and understanding to show to others. It sounds cliche, and I know it is, but this really is a lifesaver. When your days feel overwhelming, those little moments can go a long way toward creating a feeling of balance, even if life isn't so balanced right now. If you find this content interesting, then give this video a big thumbs up and make sure to hit that subscribe button below. See you in the next video.